Hi, hello, PNB audiences. Buenas tardes, buenos dias, wherever you are at. My name is Ana María Campoy, and I will be the moderator today for PNB is Listening. And I am happy to introduce these wonderful dancers, give everyone their opportunity to introduce themselves. Let's start with to my right now, Clara.
Hello, everybody. My name is Clara. I'm one of PNB's dancers, and my father is from the Dominican Republic.
Hi, my name's Sarah-Gabrielle. I'm also a dancer here at PNB, and I identify as Chicana. My mom is from Puebla, Mexico, and my dad lived his first few years in Mérida, Mexico, before he was raised in Belize the rest of his life. So.
Hi, I'm Amanda Morgan. I'm also a dancer here at PNB. My mother is from the Dominican Republic, and my father is Puerto Rican.
Awesome, thank you. And then since I forgot to include that, I'm also Chicana. My mom was born in DF and grew up in Sonora. My papa was born in East LA, actually, but grew up in Las Afueras, like the outside of Juarez in Chihuahua. So I am so excited to be having this conversation today about Latinidad and dance with all of you. And for the beginning, does anyone want to just talk about a little bit of like what connections to your heritage that you bring into your dance to start off?
Okay, I'll go first then. I think for me, every culture is going to have dance in some way or form. And I think especially in Latinidad cultures, like dance is a huge part of a way to connect everyone. It connects people in the streets. It connects people in their homes, their families, the entire community. So I think already growing up, I grew up with dance, whether it was like bachata, merengue, like at family gatherings, things like that. And I'm sure like both of you two have had the same, or all three of you have probably had similar experiences. But that was kind of, I've always loved dancing.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think there was ever a family party that I went to that people weren't just dancing all night. So I think it's very much in our blood, in our culture, kind of how we communicate with each other and have fun together. So I think it's something that comes very naturally.
Yeah, I agree. I think my parents actually met dancing at an event to celebrate, I think, the independence of Nicaragua. But it's always been a part of both of my parents' lives and now my life. And I think that with Latin culture, there's just so much energy and vibrancy and colorfulness to every aspect of what our culture is. But I think, with ballet, you don't always see that. And, even incorporating the looseness of your hips or, really, really bringing in that energy. I think it's helped me a lot and made me enjoy dance that much more. Yeah.
Thank you, all of you. One assumption that people have a lot of times is like not just that Latinidad is one look, one language, one style of culture, one history, one in fact, like the word Latino or Latinidad refers to be Latin, it refers to the land, so it refers to our tie to where our home countries are. This is for audiences who don't know this. Hispanic refers to language, so those who speak Spanish, which includes Spain, but then excludes countries like Brazil that predominantly speaks Portuguese and excludes large parts of the populations that still speak indigenous languages. So that's why a lot of people prefer to use Latin or Latinx, which are gender non-conforming like terms to embrace all of the spectrum of people and affirming people in Latin America, and referring to our tie to the land. And also to note that Latinidad comes with a spectrum of races. In addition, it's just our ethnicity. Like we are mixed race, we are white, we are indigenous, we are Black, and we are Asian as well. If a lot of times people are shocked to hear that that there are Asian Latinos, but I mean were Asian revolutionary leaders in Cuba and other parts of Latin America that led to many of our independence. So I just want to shout that out before we continue diving in. I'm just naming that for people who are maybe confused about the difference between hearing Latino, Latin, Latinx. We'll be kind of using these terms a little interchangeably. And versus Hispanic, which only refers to our tie to a language rather than entirely to a culture or a place. So just a shout out to that. In terms of getting to see more representation of Latinidad in ballet, what are works of art that you've been able to do that focus on a Latin story or focus with a Latin choreographer or music? What have been some of your highlights, or what are some of your wishes that you want to do more of in that realm?
I'll go ahead. Amanda and I were both so lucky to be a part of Margarita Armas's piece a few months ago, where she highlighted all different parts of her heritage. And she created 3 solos for myself, Amanda, and another dancer, Cecilia Aliciu. One was in English, the other one was in Spanish, and the other one was in Quechua, which is the native language for Peruvian people. I don't know, Amanda, if you want to talk about it, but it was really special to me. I actually find a really hard time identifying with my heritage while also doing ballet. So that was huge for me. And I called my dad and I was like, Puppy, you have to watch this. I'm finally dancing to a Spanish speaker. But yeah, Amanda, you can talk about that if you would like.
Yeah, it was great to like work with, for one, a choreographer that wasn't just a hetero white man, for one. But in addition, it's just, I mean, talking to Margarita, she had us sit down in the beginning of the whole process, talk to us for like 2 hours, just about like why each section mattered and how this directly connected to her family's roots. And she even talked about, like, in my specific section, she like influenced some type of like folkloric Peruvian dance a little bit, and how it came from a slave dance when slaves were freed in Peru. And I think that's like what's wonderful about all of these Latinidad like cultures, and specifically their dances, is like it's a continuation and a retelling of our roots and our stories, and celebrating that, and showing that like even within us, like our indigenous ancestors are still here, even if like they're not necessarily visible in the way that we think of when we think indigenous. So I think she really showed that very well in this piece for PNB, and I think she'll continue to do that. But yeah.
Yeah, Margarita's amazing. I didn't get to do it, but I loved watching it. She's been such an inspiration. I have some Andean roots too. And so just like learning so much from her, she has so much knowledge about her culture and her background and history. She's incredible. The only thing that we've all gotten to do is West Side Story. But that was a really big deal for me. My apprentice year, I did Maria, and that was the first time where I got to portray a Latina character on stage. And I thought that was so cool. And just, you know, we all did America Girls, and it was fun. And yeah, I think it was really important and allowed me to feel like myself on stage. I don't know.
If we do want to talk about representation, I think that being mixed, it's been hard to fully identify with either side. And I was very lucky to grow up in an extremely diverse neighborhood. But that meant that people kind of only saw me as white because I didn't look as Latin as my peers. And then getting into the dance world, I also really didn't feel like I could identify with this Latin side of me, because there weren't people really to look towards. So I think with West Side Story, I was seen just as Caucasian, which was actually kind of difficult. And I would have loved to be up there dancing with my fellow dancers and really finally appreciate that side that I have to me on stage and kind of combine those worlds. And Margarita's piece really let me do that, which was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, it's good. So I was going to just say, like, I think it's good for people to understand that, you know, Latinidad, like, we don't all look the same. Both Clara and I are Dominican and the same amount Dominican, yet we look very different. And like understanding that just because someone is, you're not going to be too black, too white, for whatever, like you identify how you identify, and it doesn't discredit where your family is from or what your culture is. And I think, I mean, that's something I've like also run into too, where it's like immediately people just assume I'm African-American or I'm like half white, half black and nothing else. And it's like, actually, no, I have 2 Spanish speaking parents and they're immigrants. So, you know, I think making sure to like let people identify how they want to and not just putting people in boxes. Cause I think especially in the States, we tend to do that. We tend to put people in boxes and trying to just check off boxes. And it would be nice to have a little more intersectionality and being able to have more in-betweens and being both. Like people can be more than one thing.
Yeah.
Right.
That goes
Humanity
a lot.
contains multitudes. Sorry, Sarah. Sorry, Clara.
No, I was just going to say, you know, representation in the dance world, especially, there has been a bit of initiative in terms of trying to get minorities to have more of a voice. But sorry, my little setup is falling. I think, especially growing up, it's gotten slightly better, and it is better at PNB than other places. But I felt a lot of the times like establishments would find one minority and pick that minority, and that would be their token form of diversity, and that would represent diversity in a school or in a company. And, you know, that person could be on the poster of every single ad. And I don't think it was fair to communities that really want to see their heritage represented, and or even communities that think, oh, this place is going to be diverse, and then realize that places had just picked one person to show that they were diverse, or maybe that people could brag about. So I think, yeah, it is really important to get everybody out there, get everybody's voices heard.
I also feel like there's layers to it too, because I feel like PNB is the first time where I had friends who were Latin American, like grew up in the States, but had this Latin background. I was really lucky in my training that I did get to train with people from Mexico or from Colombia, but it's like we shared a lot of the same cultural values and stuff, but our upbringings were still just different because we're not from there. And so, yeah, like these two were some of my first friends here, and they were the first people that I met in my training who had a similar upbringing as me. And I think that was really important in finding myself and a sense of comfort in my culture.
Yeah, there's an expression for first and second generation immigrants, or first and second generation Americans whose parents were immigrants from Latin America. That's ni de aquí ni de allá. Like, I'm not from here, not from there. And for me as an artist, as a theater artist, that has deeply influenced like my lens of like, what does it mean to kind of live in flux and live in and do art, kind of like be a border and kind of like live in the border, because you don't really fully belong on one side or the other. And so I'm curious to hear like, how has like me being of ni de aquí ni de allá, how does that brought your lens to your work? How does that maybe inspire you to like want to bring more influences from both ends together? How does that influence you?
I know I've been specifically reading a lot by Mexican American authors, and that's been really helpful to kind of find similar paths that other artists have had. Yeah, I don't know. That's just something that I've been doing, and it's been really helping me.
I think for me, I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, so there's not very many Dominicans or Puerto Ricans here. And a lot of my family lives in New York City. So I think I always viewed New York as this way to learn more about my culture and about like my actual community, especially in like Washington Heights, for instance. It's like there's so many Dominicans and Puerto Ricans there. So that would be the time that I would be able to like speak more Spanish or have the actual food that, you know, like besides at home, you know, and see people that looked like me, that understood like, oh, just because she's Black doesn't mean she's African American. They like would see me and be like, oh yeah, she's Dominican or Puerto Rican or whatever. So I think like that was like a very big thing that has influenced me lately, like realizing like, oh, I learned about my culture through going to other places, like somewhere like New York, where like you really can see each, I guess like people from a certain country, like creating communities within the States, which I think is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think lately I've also been trying to connect more with my indigenous roots, learning about the Taino in Hispaniola, and kind of looking at like the history of like Haiti versus Dominican Republic. They share the same exact island, but people on both islands look different, and they have very different beliefs about race, and their culture are different. They have different language. So I think I'm just trying to learn more about that to influence work I'll make. And I hope to make work more that really shows, you know, what my culture is and things that people can identify with. I think it's important to keep telling our stories and to diversify not just like the people on stage, but like the stories we're telling and the ballets we're making, because that's really what's going to like ultimately change this kind of culture of making things so Eurocentric.
Amanda, you kind of hit the nail on the head, but if people haven't looked into the history of the island of Hispaniola, it is actually really interesting. And the Spanish and the French just kind of split the island in half like it was a cookie. And, you know, seeing the way both countries have kind of grown and the lasting effects that those decisions of Europeans have made on these islands is really fascinating. But my parents were both huge activists in their community and really spoke out for the rights of immigrants. And my dad, you know, was starting labor unions and really, really fought for the rights of Latin American immigrants, but also undocumented immigrants. And as I was growing up going to protests and things like that. And once I really started with ballet, I felt like that part of me really couldn't fit in because I wanted to be a part of this elite world. And I felt like I really started to stray from it. And I moved to Seattle a couple of years ago. And that's when I really started to feel kind of this hole in how far I'd strayed from how I'd grown up, and even the political beliefs of my parents and how strongly they felt. I felt like that couldn't fit into what I was trying to achieve in my career. So it was huge getting to meet Amanda and Sarah and the rest of our Latinx dancers here, because I hadn't felt that representation yet. And I really felt like there was this huge divide of where I wanted to fit in. But still kind of being away from my family has made me like gravitate towards them so much more. And now I feel this huge importance of having that representation in dance, doing things like Margarita's piece, I just worked with Vincent Lopez, who is a wonderful choreographer. We just finished a piece for him like last week. And we didn't even talk about our heritage, but like feeling that connection and kind of unspoken connection was so special to be able to be in the same studios that I come to every day and feeling my heritage represented was really great. And I want more of that.
What are like, whether they're teachers or other dancers that you have looked up to, that have inspired you, that kind of like gave you that feeling of like, I'm seen, as you are coming up through the dance world? And it doesn't necessarily have to be ballet too. If you're thinking of like other, dance teachers or representations of Latin artists, like just what else drives you, or who are some people you look up to?
I was really lucky. I was trained by a woman named Marilena Ruiz from Venezuela. And she kind of took me under her wing a little bit and it was kind of the same. Like she knew that I was Latin, and she really only spoke to me in Spanish if I was like in trouble, but that kind of made it feel more like family. And then Evelyn Cisneros, I think, is incredible. If anyone doesn't know her, Mexican-American ballet dancer, and now she is leading Ballet West School, I believe. And yeah, there are a lot of dancers out there today that I find myself really looking up to. There's Karina Gonzalez, who I absolutely love. Katia Carranza, she's amazing. I think we've been really lucky to see more diversity out in upper ranks in ballet worlds.
I'll say, I mean, Carl and Lindsay for me, because I came to the school at PNB when I was like 13, 14. And so the first show I got to see, I remember it was like Carell and Laura doing like Black Swan Pas de Deux. And I was like, oh, someone looks like me. And then I saw that he was from Cuba, and I was like, oh, he's like Caribbean Hispanic too. It's like, because I think, especially when you grow up on the West Coast, a lot of people, when you say you're Latina or whatever, it's like they immediately think Mexican and there's like nothing else. It's just Mexican. And so I think I was very excited to see that representation. And another thing too was actually when the movie Center Stage came out, Zoe Saldana's character, I was like, I saw myself. That was probably the moment where I like saw myself and I was like, I know I can do this, because I saw a woman that was like Black, but she was speaking Spanish and was like still very clearly like Latin. And I was like, okay, like there's the representation I needed to like see myself.
Growing up, I am from the School of American Ballet, so I wasn't really looking at other companies very much. I kind of only saw New York City Ballet, and kind of like we were speaking about, I felt like they had their few token minorities and felt like they could check that box off. So I didn't really see myself, not that there were no Latinx dancers, but I wasn't really seeing that representation until I got here and got to actually be friends with Latinx dancers and had them be like, no, Clara, you have to say this in Spanish and you have to say it with the right accent, and you're Dominican and you have to acknowledge that side of you. You're not just white. So I really appreciate my peers that really helped bring that side out of me. And so it's been a little bit later in life that I've felt that connection. And they're younger dancers, but they're coming up and they'll be big names soon.
What are some goals for you as a dancer, or maybe post dance that your work in ballet and your heritage, that you feel like it's coming together? Like, is it that you're hoping to bring more like cultural dances to PNB, or you'd love to do that with other modern choreographers? Is it that you'd want to be able to take the work, be able to bring more of the community to come see ballet? What is it that you're excited about or interested in, whether in the next couple of years in your career?
I definitely just want to see more stories that represent us. Sometimes I wonder like what a La Llorona ballet would be like. I don't know if it'd be a little too scary, but just things like that you can play with, and they can be abstract, and it will bring other audiences in because they'll see, they want to see that on stage. They connect with that. They know that. So yeah, I think I've been trying to read a lot of like indigenous Mexican stories too, to see how that would translate to stage and art. And even like my dad's Belizean culture, make something based on the duende, if anyone knows what that is. But I just think it'd be something that would bring more people in and feel more welcome if they saw themselves represented on stage.
Yeah, similar to what Sarah said. I mean, I'm a choreographer besides a dancer, and I want to make stuff that, shows more of my heritage, and not just like me making it, but also giving whatever opportunity I can, using my platform to uplift other indigenous choreographers, musicians, all of that, so that they can show their work and be seen. Because I think, and also just like showing different types of dance and understanding that like all dance should be valued. Because I think when a lot of people think street dance or folk dance, they're like, oh, it's lower than ballet. But at the end of the day, like the epitome of dance started in the streets. It started with the people. Ballet was not the first form of dance. It is not the only form of dance. It is not the best form of dance. It is a great form of dance, but I think we need to acknowledge all of it and try to, I don't know, I want to collaborate more with kind of fusing different types of dance together, because I think that's where you can really have some beautiful things come out of it, and also hit a lot of different communities and people and let them feel seen.
Yeah, I think we're really lucky to be living in a time right now where audiences want to see things that haven't been done before. And there's a whole realm of dance that has not been incorporated into ballet yet, and incredible music that we're not seeing on ballet stages. And it would be really, really fun to be a part of something that incorporates all of that and represents a lot of us that haven't quite been represented yet. Through ballet or contemporary forms of ballet.
One thing that I feel often is just the history of Latin arts in the United States specifically, is that it parallels like a history of resistance, or like the art also parallels a history of a fight for civil rights, and whether it is Teatro Campesino, which Luis Valdez did with migrant workers, or other forms of like ballet folklorico, because a lot of that ballet folklorico is also like similar to ballet, like passed down orally along with the history behind it, the people behind it. So some dances like are symbolic of revolutions, they're symbolic of all these other things. So I feel like there's a lot of cultural history that is not always included when there's sometimes, when they do the pop-up of like, West Side Story, we're going to do the stuff choreographed by a white man, written by a white man. And so my curiosity or interest is to hear about what are ways that you think that ballet companies can more thoughtfully collaborate with like Latino communities, Latino artists, Latinx artists, include the community that maybe don't have that formalized training of like ABT or PNB school, but their dancing skills and their knowledge and history and context is like out of this world about that specific region of music or dance. But so I'm just curious to hear you address that. What are ways that you think that companies should be doing more, whether it is in their marketing, whether it is in their hiring of designers, whether it is, whatever it is, what else do you think or wish that companies would do more of?
I think, with any type of collaboration, a big organization collaborating with anyone, or even like a choreographer saying like, hey, I want to make a piece about this, making sure to actually include the people that are part of it in some way or form, giving them a voice. Like, don't just take a culture or say, I want to make a piece about this, and then like not even include the people that it involves, even like giving them a voice in some way, whether that's the composer, whether that's the choreographer, whether that's the dancers, whether that's a costume designer. Like there are so many factors that go into that. And also like just the audience members, like I think more like nowadays we need to like start interviewing people more, like letting people speak about like why they decided to make something. What is the importance of something? Because when audiences go to see things, even though people think they don't care about that, they do. It really changes the whole view of how you see a piece. And so I think ballet directors in general, they just need to actually collaborate if they're going to collaborate, not just saying like, I'm going to just bring this person in to kind of check off a box. It's not about that. You actually want to give space and make space, and then allow, different cultures and different people to take up the space and trust it, take a risk. Because I think it won't fail. If anything, it might just make your company succeed more than you think.
Yeah, I think what Amanda's saying about collaboration actually is really a really important one, because I know Christopher Wheeldon's making a Mexican ballet right now, like Water for Chocolate. But he's working with the author of the book, who is Mexican. So I was like, you know, this is a starting ground. He has this big name. He can get us this platform, and, you know, where can we go from there? And sometimes it is just making sure that you're working with the right people. I think it's interesting that you brought up West Side Story, because it is, you know, it's a story that is half Puerto Rican, half white. And once again, we're seeing it told from a white perspective. And I think that, you know, with the new movie and everything, which I'm excited about, but I do wonder, like, what if we brought in a Puerto Rican to make a new West Side? Like, what would that look like, you know?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is going to come with education. And I'm hoping that, I don't know what the school systems are like now with everything that's been happening, but I think that people need to be a little bit more educated in the control that the U.S. has had in so many countries. I mean, even if you're looking just specifically at the Dominican Republic, after they got their independence from Spain, they were then led by U.S. influenced leaders for decades. And understanding that so many of our countries have a history of oppression from specifically the U.S., you know, they're seen as the backyard of the United States, which is so privileged in itself, that, you know, once you really recognize that and internalize that, you will want to uplift these voices and see them as, you know, a way to gain some perspective and, you know, see them as equals and not just as something new and shiny that you want to, you know, play around with, take the music because you like it, you know, really appreciate the culture.
I want to add to that, Clara, because you said, like, don't just take the music, appreciate the culture. So I really firmly believe arts organizations can actually do strong impacts in ways that actually uplift communities in direct ways, and not just providing art, because, like, leveraging the fact that we have people's attention as artists. And so just knowing that we're wrapping up our time as well, what are things right now that you wish that people would pay attention to? Are there any issues or places that they would take a look at? Or what are ways that you wish that, like, an arts organization would be more aware and trying to reach to the community in a real way and support the community in a very real way? So it's not just about, like you said, like, shiny tourism and coming in and just, like, taking a little piece for one season and then forgetting about it and ignoring that audience and that community until the next time you do West Side Story or Don Quixote or anything that is like Latin or Hispanic, you know, taking that actually thoughtfully of, like, how can we continue this relationship with this community and how do we continue to support this community?
I think that one way is showing that dance doesn't just need to be in the theater, taking, like, you know, bringing dance to the public in general. That's what I want to do with the Seattle Project. That's what I'm trying to do. But I think we need to do that more. Like, I don't understand why we only think that dance so many times just needs to be in a theater. It makes it so inaccessible to so many people. They don't know about it at all. And if dance did, again, start in the streets, start with the community, like, that's a way to connect people. That's a way to understand other people's cultures. So even, you know, having a mesh, like a performance of different types of, like, dances and choreographers, and, like, that's a way to share stories, share testimonies, share histories, and also be able to understand each other more. And I think if a community saw that, you know, ballet company specifically was doing that with people from their community and collaborating in that way, I think, and also for free, like, providing funding to these places too, not just expecting things to be for free from other artists, paying them what they are worth, and they are worth a lot usually. So making sure that they are paid is very, very important. Yeah.
I think that education is going to be huge. I think that we have to understand that if we went to school in the US, our history was taught from the perspective of the United States, and they don't always really share the whole story. And you're going to have to do your own work if you want to know what's really going on and how countries are still being affected today. That, you know, with a lot of issues, this isn't just about the Latinx community, that it feels like right now our history classes are kind of wrapped up in this pretty bow. And, you know, after the civil rights movement in the 60s, everybody, you know, got their, were legally protected and there's no more segregation and everything's done and there are no more lasting effects. You know, it's not the way the world works, and communities are still being impacted, and it's not 100% being acknowledged because it's not being talked about, it's not being taught. So having that awareness is, I think, going to make people more open to realizing that there's not representation, there's not as much diversity as they think there is. And the arts are really a special way to do that. A great platform to do it, an interesting platform to do it from. Yeah.
Yeah, I think these two nailed it. It is such a, I mean, art is a universal language, and there's no reason that we can't be telling whatever stories we want to tell, and we can do that anywhere. So
I think too, I just want to say one more thing. Like, remembering that Latinidad, like all of us are the remnants of our ancestors. Like, we are the first people that were in the Americas. Like, that needs to be said more and more, especially when people are thinking about immigrants, particularly from Latin America, othering them, like when they're coming here, thinking that somehow they don't belong here. And when in reality, especially Mexicans, they were here first. So, like, acknowledging that.
Thank you. I'm seeing our time, and it looks like we're at the end, but I'm in it. I would love to hear, just before we sign off, if there are any young Latinx dancers out there that are watching this, any words of advice, you could speak in whatever language you want, or encouragement that you'd like to give to them before we sign off today.
I think I just want to say that we see you and you are represented, and I think there's just so much to be proud of from your heritage, and be proud of it, you know, especially if you're looking to rise in a career that is predominantly white. Don't be ashamed of who you are. You know, be proud of who you are. It makes you different. And that is so incredibly special. And I wish that, you know, I had felt that when I was growing up, because I didn't. And it's huge. It's really, really important to have people like that in the arts.
I would say, I mean, for one, you can do anything you set your mind to, but also just, yeah, be proud of your heritage. Be proud of where you're from. Be proud of where your family's from. Be proud of the other languages that you speak. And this isn't just for Latinx people, but just in general. Like, I think the more we highlight, you know, all of these different diverse places where we're from, it only makes us stronger, and it only makes the art better. And in addition, just reminding yourself, like, you are like the person that is continuing this legacy of, you know, ancestors that never thought that we would even be here still. And I know that's a very deep thing to think about, but it is something that really guides me in what I do. So I think it might help others.
No, I agree. I think the most regret that I have is were the times where I felt like I was trying so hard to assimilate in our ballet world. And I think it is just being proud of who you are and be yourself.
Well, thank you all so much, like for your wisdom and for your creative thinking and everything. And I cannot wait to see like what's next for all of you, like just like bold, brilliant young women. So I'm very excited. So thank you for that. And so thank you so much for joining me today for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.